Hey everyone, welcome to all you amazing punctual people. I'm Jessica. I will start my intro in like a minute, just to give everybody coming in hot from a different meeting a second to get in here. But we're so excited to have this conversation with you and happy Wednesday. Yay. It is a little odd. I feel like being in the webinar format where we can't see the rest of your faces or see your chats. It's a little bit like finger guns at each other, but yeah, I think I will just kick it off, be super respectful of people's time because there's so much good stuff for us to dig into with these lovely CMOs. So I will start out by introducing myself. I'm Jessica Berg. I'm Director of Business Development at Authentic. And I am joined today by some of the amazing, brilliant marketing leaders in our world that are going to share some insight on demand versus lead gen marketing. But before I dive into that, I'm going to give you a little bit of a quick intro to Authentic, into this webinar series as a whole, kind of the context that we're arriving here in. So Authentic is a community of fractional chief marketing officers. We work with growing businesses as their marketing leaders, but on a flexible and part-time basis. We like to lovingly say that we help organizations overcome random acts of marketing and take the next right step towards confident growth. We mostly work with small and medium-sized businesses between 5 and 100 million in revenue. There's definitely exceptions to that, but that's our sweet spot. And we work with people across industries, across the US, and a few across the world, which is really fun. We love the work that we get to do. So this webinar that you're here joining us in is part of our Authentic Growth webinar series. And these are all real issues, topics, challenges that we encounter in the clients that we work with every single day. Our CMOs have so much rich experience that I'm super excited for them to start spouting off to you. But our goal is to give you a glimpse into our chief marketing officer's strategies, brains, like kind of take you under the hood to how they think about these challenges. And then, it's some heady stuff. It's a lot of it depends, but hopefully you come away with some thought starters, some really practical advice or ways that you can bring some of these ideas into your own businesses, or just maybe reframe some of your thinking if you've been doing things only a certain way for the past few years. And from an audience standpoint, this conversation is geared primarily towards business owners and revenue leaders, but we know we've got a variety of different folks joining us today. So even if you're an early career marketer, if you were an agency partner or some other type of executive leader, we are so happy you're here. We're super fired up to spend the next hour-ish with you. And just a couple like super fast housekeeping items before I turn it over to our CMOs to introduce themselves. In this like Zoom webinar world, whether you're new to Zoom webinars or not, if you see at the bottom bar on your screen, there is a Q&A little question mark icon. At any point throughout the webinar, please fire and type in your questions into that space. That's going to be the place that we look for your questions later, but we'll hold those until a dedicated Q&A time at the end. So if you're like me, like the thought will fly out of your brain as we get into it, type it in any time, but we'll just come back to it at the end of the webinar. Also, this is being recorded. So if you're a note taker, go off, take your notes, but just know you'll get a link to this recording after the fact, so you don't have to perfectly capture or remember every brilliant nugget that you hear. And then finally, mark your calendars. Our next webinar in this Authentic Growth series is coming up on July 23rd, and it is focused on navigating uncertainty, which like, who knows her, and then building lasting business value within entrepreneurial companies. So that's going to be fantastic. Can't wait for that, but it's coming up on July 23rd. So if you're interested, watch your inbox, watch our website, and you'll see some more information and registration info coming out for that one pretty soon. So excited. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our illustrious CMOs to introduce themselves. I'm going to look to you first, Veronica, if you want to give yourself an intro.
Sure. And since it's obvious we're not going alphabetical, I'm guessing it's either by height or length of time in the industry. I have been in marketing long enough that I remember what right reading emulsion down is. And that also gives you an idea of how much of the marketing expanse I've worked in, right? Because I owned my own agency, so I've really touched every aspect of marketing. And the other part about that is, even though I've worked for enterprise level companies, today I'm going to really focus on comments that are going to come from the SMB world, because I owned a small business. And so I really understand the constraints and the worry that you go through when you are the one who's responsible for payroll and making rent every month. So I'm going to really come from that perspective. I have worked, as I said, across all industries, B2C, D2C, B2B, all of them. And so, yeah, I've got a lot of experience, and I spend a lot of time helping companies that are either building their marketing foundation, or they're going through some kind of seismic shift where they've got a change in leadership, a change in how they're going to go to market. And the way that I help them is I really specialize in crafting messaging that helps connect them to their target audience in a meaningful way that helps drive results. So that would be me in a nutshell. So who's next?
Amazing. Elizabeth, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Thanks. Yeah. Similar to Veronica, I have a panoramic view background of marketing, all of the acronyms, B2B, D2C, B2C, all of these and more, I'm sure. So a few accolades in my background. I shaped a 2.3 billion valuation brand picked up by Vista Equity Group, Sales Loft. If you know them, then you know what that's all about. Also did two acquisitions, as well as earned an award for most inspirational woman in Georgia, thanks to mentorship and for how much I love to talk about marketing. I specialize in high stakes, 3 million ARR to 100 million ARR, usually a transformation, brand transformation, revenue growth transformation, leadership transformation. That's what I specialize in. So I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you for coming. Okay, Jess, last but not least at all.
You, Jess. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. My name is Jess Moyer. I am also an authentic fractional CMO. I have nearly 30 years experience, primarily in financial services and fintech. I've from consulting, advisory, agency side to client side. And that sort of led to a lot of professional services and trusted advisor work. So although I also have all of the experience, the hat that I want to wear today for this group is sort of the B2B mid-sized business, and specifically consulting, professional services, advisory type work, and how demand gen and lead gen differs for those types of businesses. And just on a personal level, I do feel like Veronica said, sort of a connection to, the SMBs. I grew up, my dad built a business from scratch, a $25 million business. We now have a family business in the mix. And so I saw all of those phases and all those pain points, and feel like, I was destined to be sort of aligned with people that are in those same positions. So excited to hear what the group has to say and share my perspective with you all today.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm so excited. So, kicking things off and maybe setting the table a little bit first, there's a lot of in-depth, maybe potentially technical stuff that we're going to cover today. But before we get there, let's just get some shared definitions or kind of table setting info out there. I'll go to you first, Jess, if you don't mind, but can you speak to a practical difference between demand generation in marketing and lead generation in marketing?
Sure, absolutely. So I think, at Authentic, generally, we're always firstly aligned on what are your objectives and what are your goals, and what phase of the buying journey are you targeting with your programs, what tactics, channels, etc. Although we acknowledge that the buying journey is not always linear, but we do try to align to different phases of the funnel. And so to that end, demand gen is really more top to mid funnel. There can be a fine line between demand and brand, but we think of it as more kind of top to mid awareness, consideration, engagement. And lead gen is really about driving those, either the handoff to sales or driving those direct leads that are ready to buy or ready to engage with your services. And I think sometimes there can be some confusion, because there could be, sometimes people think of lead gen as form fills, but you could have nurturing activities or bringing folks into the ecosystem to be nurtured that involve form fills as well. So there can be create some confusion, but I think an easy way that I like to think of it is like Google PPC, bottom of funnel, lead gen, nurturing, gated content, webinars, that kind of thing, demand gen. And I think the one last thing I want to add, and it's not really about the terminology, I think where we see the most confusion amongst business owners or, C-suite leadership is just the purpose of marketing. It's either where are the leads or sales has got it and you're driving, ground cover for them. And that leaves this whole big swath of middle funnel activities that can be ignored.
Love that. That's this whole webinar is going to be an exercise in restraint for me to not be like ooh, ooh, or ask a follow-up question. But anything you would want to add, Veronica?
So, one of the easiest ways to think about demand gen versus lead gen is if you think about the customer journey, and demand gen is really in the awareness and research phase, and then lead gen is in the consideration and purchase phase. And as I mentioned, I often work with companies that are going through the process of setting up their marketing foundation, which often means I'm helping them set up their CRM. And one of the things that I really love about HubSpot, for example, is when you go through the lead scoring process, you have to actually think about, okay, where is the point where I'm going to turn a marketing qualified lead into a sales qualified lead? And, how do we get our leads to become marketing qualified leads? So, right, when you're looking at demand gen and you're using a CRM, things that you're going to look at are going to start with visitors to your website, then leads, inquiries, raw engagements, and even engagement is a good measure of demand gen. And then for lead gen, like I said, marketing qualified leads or MQLs, sales qualified leads or SQLs, sales accepted leads, opportunities, deals. And one of the things that I always like to think about in lead gen is that's a good place to start considering BANT, which is budget authority. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but you can use in time, need and timing. So, right, you can use BANT to qualify when does somebody really move into the sales function, because it helps determine fit.
Love that. That's so helpful. Any other thoughts?
Just at last closing thought is just best laid plans, doesn't mean that you may develop what you think is a demand gen program and get somebody that's ready to buy, which would be a great case scenario, or you're thinking you're running lead gen and you get a lot of just interested folks, which I think can create a lot of frustration. But when you're thinking one outcome, but we don't control the buyer's journey, and so we're just making sure that we are attacking all areas of that journey.
Love that. Okay, awesome. That's really helpful. So one of the next questions or things that rose to the top for us in terms of really elevating the questions that we receive on a daily basis, this is so personal to so many of my sales discovery calls or intro conversations with leaders, is what we call the best kept secret problem. So many business leaders feel like their service or product or offering is a best kept secret, that they know they have something really high value, they have something that's really relevant for their potential customers, but they don't know how to enter their natural habitat or be part of that customer's consideration set. Sometimes also they want to skip demand gen and get right into lead gen because ROI is real, and bringing those customers and sales in to drive all activities is real. So in your experiences, how would you walk folks through, what's your thinking and mindset? What types of guidance or sort of initial advice do you start to give to those potential clients? And let's start with you, Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah, no problem. My general philosophy is that marketing is very simplistically just humans talking to humans. Marketing is having a relationship with your customers. And there is a clear sequence to this relationship, right? So your brand builds the demand is creating the intent, and then that lead generation is capturing the intent. So you have this full spectrum of a relationship that marketing is essentially managing with customers across what we call a customer lifecycle. Exactly. So ultimate goal of marketing isn't just to get leads through the door and book them and be done, because nobody wants to be sold to. When was the last time that you were like, oh yeah, sell to me, this is great? You want to like cultivate a relationship with the place that you're buying something from. And I also want to encourage any leader that's listening to this to not try to split hairs on this ROI of like, well, lead gen is the only thing I want to measure, or demand gen is really the only thing I want to measure, because you can really measure those things, and I only care about ROI. Really getting those things in place is pitting marketing against itself to say which one is more important. And that's not the goal of marketing. We need to create a flywheel of relationships so that we can nurture from cradle to grave, right? So again, like, really the whole philosophy of marketing is it's talking to the right people at the right time with the right message.
Love that. Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll jump in. I really love that, Elizabeth. I have a long time ago, I worked with a group of agency owners to write a book about, the best kept secrets of marketers. And mine was that marketing is the art of having an individual relationship with a lot of people at the same time, right? Because if you are doing your if you're doing your brand awareness and your demand gen well, people will actually feel like you're speaking directly to them. And the other thing that I like to remind clients is that also the people who aren't your customer will not engage with you, which some people are afraid of, right? Like they don't like the idea that my brand is going to actually help some people self-select out. But when you think about it, that's incredibly cost effective. And it means like you're going to deliver on your brand promise to somebody who actually wants that. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a really important thing to remember that a good brand is both a filter and a net. And again, when we're talking about businesses that feel like they're the best kept secret, it means they have something valuable, but not enough people know about it. And particularly, right, in their ICP, their ideal customer persona, not enough of those people know about it. And good branding will attract more of those people more intensely. But right, like at that point, if that's the case, it does mean you're probably going to want to invest more towards the demand gen than lead gen, right? Because if nobody knows who you are, how are they going to raise their hand to raise a question, right? So it's just, if that's your situation, you have to think about how you're going to allocate your budget a little bit differently.
Love that.
I'm going to jump in and just say, it's so funny you said self-select out. There's one thing I said earlier on in my career to a C-suite, and he never let it go in a positive way. I told him, I literally want people to unsubscribe from our newsletter. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because it's just getting us closer to them buying something from us. It just means, and I also don't have to pay at the time constant contact for the bracket of people on our list that don't care about our services or products, right? So just as an aside, it's good to self-select. It's a net and a deterrent. Or how do we describe it, Veronica?
Yeah.
Love it. Anything to add, Jess?
I'm just gonna, so not necessarily along the best kept secret, but along this kind of like flywheel concept. Just give a nod to business development and sales as being part of that flywheel and that mix, especially because I do work in a lot of large, complex, large dollar sales environments in which, the brand gets mixed with the relationship, and the sales team is a huge component of that flywheel. And I think it's good marketing's job to get them more at bats and to raise awareness and consideration amongst the target prospects, as well as support through mid-funnel and even support with materials that help close the deal. But I don't think good marketing, there are some scenarios, and I'm sure like digital first, all that, where good marketing doesn't mean salespeople, but I do think it's an important part of the mix. And I just recently read one of our benchmarking articles from Demand Base, which I really loved, which said, when you think about demand in lead gen, it's not about a relay race and a baton handoff. In a complex buying journey and in a healthy relationship between sales and marketing, it's more like a soccer team. You're kind of bouncing the ball back and forth. Maybe you're going backwards a couple times. You're sharing between, and the ultimate goal is to move down the field and get to what's best for the organization. So I'm a big proponent, and we are a big proponent at Authentic, of partnership and kind of win-win approaches.
Love that.
And I'm sorry, Jess, I don't mean to cut in. It's really interesting because when you think about marketing. The question is like, where does it begin and where does it stop? And again, if you think of it in terms of marketing is about managing relationships, it doesn't, right? Like once you make that connection with a person, marketing should stay involved through the entire process, because let's face it, how you deliver on the brand promise, right? Like the product or service that you actually get to the customer is marketing, right? Like that experience is the delivery of the promise that you made at the start of the relationship. So for me, right, like, and again, if you have good marketing, you know, marketing and sales should always be aligned, because marketing softens the beach for sales, right? And I have been in some organizations where we got to the point where the salespeople really just had to pick up the phone and take the order. And I'm not saying that that's the case, right? Like, I'm not, I love salespeople. I've been a salesperson. I'm often in the position of selling. So like, I don't want to make it sound like sales isn't important, because it is. And especially in certain industries, it's more important than in others. But it is really important to remember that your brand isn't the logo that's on your t-shirt. Your brand is how every single person and every piece of material interacts with that customer, client, patient through the entire journey. And it includes how they leave, right? And that's, I again, because I work with SMBs, I often get involved in recruiting. And one of the things that's really important to remember is how you exit an employee says a ton about your brand. How you end a relationship with your customer says a ton about your brand. So, don't forget that. And if you aren't thinking about it, maybe you need to talk to your marketing person about how you should manage it.
And not to like cut into it, but it'll tee us up for the next conversation we're having on measurement. But just to add like some places that Veronica was talking about that I think are really important, that a lot of marketers don't actually include in their metrics, are things like Glassdoor reviews for employer brand, which was Veronica was talking about. Glassdoor reviews are huge. That's a big marketing play for the company. NPS scores, it's usually typically a product or product marketing thing. That should be, a bottom line for the company in general. How satisfied are people with the product? And I also look at churn rate, so customer success. So beyond the experience of sales, like, yes, we want to partner with sales. I love what you said, Jessica, about it's a relay. It's not just a baton pass. It's like a partnership, right? Going even further beyond that, like marketing can mine from a churn, or customer success. So I can't wait to talk about measurement next. Okay, Jessica, I'll let you get back to your job.
Amazing. No, you got it. I love it. So, yeah, teeing up, like this is our big meaty kind of anchor question, because this is so commonly something that our clients or within our own kind of ecosystems that we're debating, we're helping set people up for success. We're maybe debunking some like previously held misconceptions about marketing. But the core of this question is, how do you, as a marketing leader, set organizations up for success, and what KPIs they're looking at between demand gen and lead gen, and then all this stuff in between? Again, recognizing there's so much difference, whether it's a B2C business and the customer is making the purchase directly versus sometimes in a B2B or a sales enabled process where they're having a conversation with a human and helping them. There's just a lot to cover. So maybe I'll go to you first, Elizabeth, talking about demand gen.
Yeah, totally. And just one small thing to share, a philosophy or something to think about for anyone out there in listening land. Lots and lots of people are going to say that brand is not measurable, and I completely respect their opinion. I respectfully disagree, though. I think it's inaccurate to say that it's completely unmeasurable, because in general, demand, lead gen, brand, this is all part and parcel for marketing. Good marketing drives unit economics, that they drive the bottom line revenue for the business. And really we need to think about things not in contest, departments in contest with each other, but in harmony with each other across the business, right? So things like thinking about it in terms of, rather than what's my ROI specifically, but like upstream, downstream, lagging, and predictive metrics are an easier way to kind of consume what we're talking about in this webinar. So I have some really great examples of that. In general, like the other caveat I want to say too is, should we be measuring every single thing in the business? Absolutely not. I think it's really important to talk mostly about revenue driving and unit economics. So how much does it cost to get one customer in the door? How long are they in? Do they churn quickly? How often are they buying when we do get them in the door? So back to leading, lagging, predictive, all of that kind of stuff. So a few categories, there's 4 categories for me. Pipeline velocity. So just talking about like, how fast are you getting them in? Do they have a good experience during that time, from first to last touch point? How many of them are churning? So your churn metrics, are people dropping off? Are they buying? One company I worked with had a 51% close rate on calls. Like that spoke. Yeah, I saw everyone's eyebrows like go up. It was enterprise sales. So I'll give credit where credit is due, enterprise. So they knew about us for a really long time, but 51% that's all brand. So that's a really, really good predictive metric on how well that's performing. The second category is brand search and direct traffic. Those are usually your thumb in the wind of what's coming next. Are people searching for us? Are they are they coming to visit us? Are they consuming our content? Are they sharing our content with others? Tracking that is vital. Social echo, share of voice. That's the third category. It's really, really vital. Some people are like, oh, that's hard to track. It's expensive. But if you pick a few really important key metrics for your business to track, it varies from business to business, but really what I love to measure, especially in share of voice on social, is how often your company is being mentioned compared to competitors and how often competitors are being mentioned. And the last one is dark funnel. People say you can't measure anything in dark funnel. And I, again, say that is not true, because you can always ask. You can sit into sales calls, listen to, the question like, how did you find us? Listen to the answer. People are are they mentioning a CEO's LinkedIn post? Are they mentioning podcasts? What are they, mentioning? Interviews. You can track those things, and it's important to talk to your whole team about those. But yeah, I would love to kick it off with somebody else and what they think about measurement in general, because that was a big, long, rattled list.
Yeah. But it's so helpful. So thank you. Jess, how about you?
Yeah, I think I love everything you said, and yes to all the measurements. I would just say that I think sometimes marketing gets a bad rap for, being too focused on leading indicators, or people will say vanity metrics, things like, brand search, website traffic, email engagement, database size, database engagement. But I do think that those metrics indicate that you're on the right path, and especially important for earlier stage businesses. But it is our responsibility as leaders to close the loop with the end of the day, the bottom line results. And I'll just I don't know if this is something we share usually publicly, but Authentic has this great triangle graphic that shows at each level of the organization what are all the metrics that you're looking at and talking about. And certainly your marketing team needs to be looking at those leading indicators, because you can't drive growth without healthy channels. And so they need to be watching the health of their channels. And I just think sometimes maybe the conversations happen in the wrong rooms or with the wrong folks, and they're not positioned appropriately. But I do think these leading indicators matter.
For sure. Yeah, that's such a good point. Just to put a finer point on that. And if anybody is curious about that triangle, email me, or I would love to follow up, because it's such a helpful visualization that, especially for C-level leaders, sometimes what we talk about is, here are all the things that your marketer should be paying attention to. You as the CEO probably don't need to be paying attention on a weekly basis to your website traffic. That's maybe not the best and highest use of your time. So it does all matter, but yeah, that stratification of how often, by whom, and then what is that driving towards is a big deal. So Veronica, I'll go back to you.
I think that Elizabeth and Jessica did a great job of answering that question. But one of the things that, and again, right, I remember when I bought my agency, we had never done a payoff report before. And so I introduced a payoff report, and it, different phone numbers on different pieces of print materials, but now there's call rail, right? So it's the same thing. So a lot of the tactics for measuring what you're measuring is still the same, but the way you get to it, like share of voice. When I worked at a ski resort, the way we did that was we counted cars from different states, right? I mean, it sounds crazy, but like if you don't have budget for these things, and again, as I said, I work with a lot of organizations who are just starting their marketing foundation, and so everything's in a spreadsheet, or it's tick marks, and so it's gathering all of that data. But one of the things that I also like to keep in mind is the quality. So, right, like if you're getting a high bounce rate, or the calls that are coming in just aren't the right, if they're not your ICP, then you do have to start thinking about changing your demand gen strategy. And again, it's even things like, I have seen circumstances where a client will tell me who their top competitors are, and then I'll go into SEMrush and do a little search and find out who the search engines are saying the competitors are, and it's not even close. So right, like there's a lot of different ways to slice and dice this, and again, a lot of it depends on what have you been doing, right? Like, and I don't mean just for brand advertising and demand gen, but what have you been doing to measure? Is that the right thing to be looking at, and what are other places that you can go and look? So yeah, I mean, these guys did a great job answering the question. I would just say, be creative in how you.
Yeah.
I love the creative idea around like the looking at the license plates, because I think a lot of people come from big companies where you do these, large brand studies, and it's hard to mimic that on a small scale. So I love the creativity there, Veronica.
And there's some really cool AI tools now that are can help you kind of do some testing with a target audience that's an AI target audience. So, but again, right, like you just have to be creative and think about, how can I get there?
Exactly, yeah. And adding to that point too, one of the things that I always was a little frustrated with at when I would talk to C-suite, they'd be like, oh, we can't afford a brand lift study. And I'm like, no, I know that thing is like $1 million to do, but it costs virtually nothing to listen to a sales call, it costs virtually nothing to offer grabbing a select few of our best favorite customers and just talking to them, these are some very low cost. There is lift, there's work involved, and that's a little extra. You have to be careful about those relationships. But I mean, again, marketing is a conversation, and that we should have the ability to have those conversations in order to get the real intel we need to pepper into, brand demand, lead performance, and ultimately lifetime value and customer acquisition costs, and all those beautiful metrics that the CEOs love.
Love that. So yeah, we're touching on some of the next phase, but now I'm gonna like shift the hat to KPIs or metrics that are important to you for lead gen. This is often the more like concrete one. So we covered the fuzzier one, or the one that maybe orgs don't think about measuring as well. But what would you all add to the conversation about lead gen metrics that you've used a lot or that you really like? And let's say, Veronica, I'll go back to you first.
This is where CRM really comes in handy, really handy. There are other tools that you can use, but it simplifies, it just automates it, right? Like it makes it so much easier to do this. And so when you're thinking about lead gen, ultimately we're measuring how effectively we can convert interest into qualified opportunities, right? And again, so now I remember BANT, budget, authority, need, timing. That's one of the ways that you can qualify your leads is, do they have the budget? Is the person you're talking to in a position to make the decision? Do they have a need, and is it the right time? But so from my perspective, and again, I'm sure we'll have some differing opinions, but one of the first things to look at in lead gen is marketing qualified leads, right? People who fit our ICP and have shown meaningful engagement. And again, I have to say, one of the things that I love about digging into a CRM is if someone hasn't gone through the process of developing your lead scoring, so you know what is meaningful engagement. Like it's a great process to go through to think about, okay, what does that actually mean? Like, is it 3 visits to the website? Is it 3 visits to the website and a form filled out? Is it, right? Like defining that is really important. But so that's the first one. And then you track how many of those become sales qualified leads, and you use BANT to determine if they fit or not. And then from my perspective, 2 of the key conversion rates to look at that tell us if our process is working is our MQL to SQ. MQLs to SQLs, right? So marketing qualified leads that convert to sales qualified leads, and then sales qualified leads to customers. And this is where it's really important that you have that good partnership with sales, so you understand where it does transition and where it needs to go back, right? So if it's not moving forward, what do we need to do to help that go forward? And then, some other KPIs to look at are cost per lead, landing page conversion rate, email click-through rate, lead source performance, right? So all of those things kind of can help you understand if you're bringing in qualified sales ready leads.
Love that. Amazing. Who wants to take it next?
I can jump in on that just to say, so Veronica covered all the metrics and the importance of the CRM. I think there's kind of 3 things that I like to also look at is I like to stack each lead gen channel against, each other. Not to say that I'm going to turn one off and turn, throw all the money one way and say, from an original lead source all the way down to a sales conversion and a cost per that conversion, how is each channel performing relative to the other channels? And just to also watch like the health of that particular channel. I also like to do, sort of that concept that Veronica was saying, which is, the conversion between MQL to SQL and SQL to sales. But a lot of pipelines are really complex. There could be like 15 stages. So there is an opportunity to go between stages and say, how can I, as a marketer, make an impact, even in a small way, to contribute to something that Elizabeth talked about, which was overall pipeline velocity. And then lastly, this sort of overlaps with customer acquisition costs, but I think something that I learned in working even with these ladies, and we are talking and preparing for this, is that, if you're, whether it's demand or lead, if you're tracking to an overall customer acquisition cost, you can keep an eye on, especially in a rapidly growing company, whether that's getting off track or not as a whole. So I think watching some of these things over time and changes in them, especially in today's world, because it's so digitally competitive, what could have been a productive PPC SEO channel may be changing. And especially with the introduction of AI, and a lot of the small, medium-sized businesses that we work with maybe don't have the dollars to compete with, like, for example, a Sales Loft or someone of that nature. So kind of watching how these change over time and keeping an eye for, like, do I have the context behind why that's changing? Is my CAC up because I just invested in, a sales team or a couple BDO hires, or is that something that, things are moving fast and hard and that got a little bit off track and I need to take a closer look at?
Love that.
Yeah, and I'd love to throw like a little curveball in here too about, I really, really think that marketing, those lead gen metrics aren't being measured as fully as we could. I think it really should come all the way down to what's our churn rate in our customer lifecycle journey, because I think, yes, measuring to MQL to SQL, talking to sales about that experience, but there's this additional piece here that we can ask ourselves about churn and how often people leave, because really there's money to be had here. These happy customers know other people. Can we influence, can we produce a better customer acquisition cost if we institute a lower lift, lower cost referral program? Is that helping us get to our ultimate number? Am I, as the marketing leader tasked with this, going to be burning less cash trying to get net new customers who don't know about us, don't trust us, maybe already are involved in another competitor and don't want to leave them just yet? That's a hard sell. Can we talk to people who know people we like, who know great people? So there are other ways to continue to mine this down, you get even further and get even more creative and even more inventive along the line.
Amazing. Love it. Okay. Well, there's so much else we could say about that, but I want to make sure we have time for the super messy budget question before Q&A. So this is maybe my biggest lift as the moderator, to caveat this question up and down so that our CMOs can be spared from having to do it. But the kind of meaty, tricky, super it depends question from the preparation that we did for this is around budget, really trying to give you all some practical, specific advice around how do you balance like what you spend on demand gen versus lead gen and all those things? Like we really have tried to be thoughtful about how to do this, and it depends so much. And I feel a little bit like I want to be a pharmaceutical commercial of talk to your doctor before you add Lipitor or something like that. But some variables for you to consider and to sort of take what our CMOs share with a grain of salt is variables around your budget would include your business model, B2B versus B2C versus B2B2C or whatever, all those lovely acronyms, the industry you're in, definitely a lot of what Jess talked about in price point of, is this like a quick like $5 decision, or is this an enterprise sale that maybe your customer is considering for 6 months and has 15 different touch points with your company? That matters a lot. Have you laid some groundwork in your brand and your demand gen before you're investing in lead gen, or is this all completely new to you? Is your competitive landscape really busy, loud, noisy, or are you bringing something really novel to the market that's less mature, and maybe some of your budget needs to go towards customer education and really building demand that your customer didn't even know that they needed this before? So that's my giving you my disclaimer hat, but I'm going to turn the mic over in the best way that I can to all of you CMOs to be sharing specific examples of how you've managed your precious marketing dollars in these chicken or egg decisions before. And I'm going to go to Jess first, if that's okay.
Sure, sounds good, Jess. I would just echo a lot of caveats. That said, I'm very confident that anyone on this call could work with a client and look at their mix of, the number of employees, the size, what the mix of the marketing budget looks like, what one client is worth to them, et cetera. And, lean on benchmarks and percentages and things where things are unknown to set budget. For me, demand gen, I've managed anything from 100,000 to 40 million. So it really does depend. What I will share, practically speaking, is that one way in which I've been able to more carefully manage budget and be more efficient for small to mid-sized clients is taking a look at sources of business and really doing kind of an 80-20 split and saying, when we think about our target audience, where is the majority of our business coming from? Now, a lot of people translate that to ICP, but in a lot of the contexts that I work in, it is also applies to partnerships, informal partnerships, because if you're working in, highly complex financial transactions, sometimes there are multiple parties involved on other sides of the transaction, and those can ultimately become referral partners. So if you get a sense, formal or informal, of having a majority of referral partner source business in one particular segment, one way that I've used demand gen effectively is to really hone in on that segment and position my company as the only solution or the trusted source or the preferred source within that segment, even though there may be other people trying to capture attention. But if I can show that, I can have more of a one-on-one conversation within a little more focused area of the business, it can also apply to customers. But in my case, I've found some real power in that referral side. Then I can work with less budget. So that's sort of just a practical thing without giving you an exact number, but we're not, going into the millions there. We're maybe talking about, 100,000-ish. So that's the way I've been able to bridge that.
Love that. Veronica, how about you?
So again, I'm going to bring my SMB, both as an owner and somebody who's worked with a lot of SMBs. Remembering that, as I said, I often help people build their marketing foundation. And I'm talking about, companies with 400 employees and who have been around for 25 years, and they're realizing, right, like the market's shifting. I need to actually, I can't do this with organic word of mouth anymore. Like, I'm going to have to start marketing. And I get in there and I'm like, okay, well, what's your marketing budget? Or what did you spend last year? And they give me a bunch of receipts, right? So when you say, can you talk about budget? It's like, yeah, but that's how different it can be. And another example I can give you is, right, because what your budget, how you spend your budget is also kind of based on, as a CEO, how you've set up your budget. And again, I'm working with someone right now who's just now changing their chart of accounts so they actually have an understanding of what is going into the marketing budget. But you know, I had a D2C client where we were spending, our only marketing spend was PPC, and we were getting 130% return on investment, right? And so we were doing really well with a pretty small budget because we were very surgical in how we manage it. I mean, we were looking at it every week and modifying where we were spending our money. So we were really being aggressive with small business. But in 1 year, we grew our e-commerce sales for this D2C company. We grew our website sales 1,100%. And the way we did that was through inbound marketing, content generation, and lead nurturing, right? So all lead gen tactics that were happening with human resources. But that didn't get counted as the marketing budget. So, right, like when you say, how do you determine the right budget and allocation? I'm gonna say, what is your budget and how have you allocated it in the past? And then we'll go from there, right? Like, because it's so incredibly variable.
Love that. Yeah. Yep. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Okay. I clearly am like the bold claim person in this webinar.
Love that for you.
but also like big caveats. And what I'm about to say also, I think it, like we were discussing beforehand, all of us CMOs, like this topic could definitely be a whole other webinar just in and of itself. There's like going to be so many things that are left unsaid just about this one topic. But one thing to say, I think could spark interesting conversation or thoughts for people in the audience to kind of take away. I've noticed, especially in 2025, this year specifically with the rise of AI and how competitive search is becoming, how easy it is to create content now. Really the benchmark for me for display ads and LinkedIn ads really seems to be, again, caveat, the $10,000 to $15,000 a month spend. Anything below that really feels like it starts to fall flat. And I don't say that to scare anyone, because 10 to 15,000 is a like eye-popping number for small businesses. They're like, oh my God, that's so much, I can't afford that. The reality of that is, in this market with the macroeconomics that we're dealing with, whatever's happening this year, whatever's going to happen this year, the focus really should be on being surgical. Just like what Veronica was saying, we really need to make sure that the right message is getting to the right person at the right time. So that means anyone under that threshold, I am seeing them become really diligent on, are they connected to their customers? Are they, making sure that their creative is fresh? How is every single dollar being spent on those ads? And they're managing it daily, hourly, weekly, whatever it takes in order to make sure that budget is actually effective, so they get a good return on their ad spend. 10 to 15 above, they should be doing the same work, but they have more room to play. They've got way more room, way more wiggle room there. It's not as detrimental. So just throwing that out there, that I'm starting to see this benchmark now. Anything under this threshold, it's becoming scarier and scarier. Anything above this threshold, it's still very scary, but there's this weird thing happening in the market right now.
And you
For sure.
mean like paid? That's what you're saying, Elizabeth. Is that like paid?
Paid. Then specifically lead capture, lead gen, just performance marketing paid.
Jess, how quickly do we need? I want to be mindful of time, but I do.
No, you go. Say your.
Okay. So, and it is a bold statement to say it's 10 to 15,000, because again, right, like my D2C customer, we had a geographic target of 150 miles because the product we were selling was so big and we had to deliver it. And right, like it was one of those things when it went down the road, right, like nobody passed. So, it was a very, very niche market. It was a very, very niche geographic target market. And so, right, like we wouldn't be, well, we wouldn't have been at that point able to spend $10,000. It just, we wouldn't have been able to spend it. But what is important to know, right, like, and I think this is a really important takeaway for anybody listening, is there is a point at which you're spending so little, you shouldn't bother spending it. And again, that's going to be variable based on all the things you already mentioned. I don't have to go through that list again. But when you hit that point, you're going to be better off spending that money on something else or pocketing it, right? And you have to, again, you need somebody who really understands marketing and how that works in order to make that decision. I'm not advocating that if you've got a channel that's not performing, you just shut it down, because it could be, there's so many other things that you could test to find out, have I hit that number? But that is something that is, I think, really important to remember, is you can get to the point where you've got diminishing returns, and it's not
Not worth it.
Yeah, agree. And
It's-
don't spread yourself too thin. I've made that
Yeah.
mistake before, where I'm trying to launch all the channels at once. And then even if I do have the budget, I just don't have the mental bandwidth to kind of track to whether it's delivering the right results.
And that's
Yeah.
another thing that's really important. And this is a little bit off topic, but I always say that the best reason to have a good marketing strategy is it helps you say no quicker. And the thing is that if you have a good marketing strategy, you are also not comparing things in a vacuum. Because if you're only looking at one-offs all the time, they all look good, but they may not be. And this is the point of that, is should not think in terms of one-offs. Do not think in terms of one-offs. Think in terms of campaign, because campaigns have been shown over and over again to perform at such like an exponential rate compared to one-offs. So that's it for me.
I mean, again, like, shut it down, but I want to make a plug or a cue to folks that if this is your moment, you have a question and you want to throw something into the Q&A box, it's your time. Like, we want to hear your questions. There are no stupid questions. Like, have at it. So I'm going to turn to you next and read some of those questions off to our CMOs. But any parting thoughts from each of you? This, like, if you have like a little nugget or a tip or something that somebody could take away that we haven't maybe had a chance to touch yet. So going back to you for that kind of final mic drop comment, Veronica.
Final mic drop comment. Ooh, that puts a lot of pressure.
And not in a like pressury way. Yeah, not intended, but
Well,
you know what I mean.
Anyone's gonna have it, it's gonna be you, Veronica. You have all the acronyms and the sayings and the
Oh yeah, all the marketing slogans. So, balancing the budget between demand and lead gen and all of your activities, it is absolutely a strategic balancing act, right? Like knowing where that number is for you, and it's going to change. It's going to be dynamic. To think that it's like, okay, I figured it out and it's going to work like this next year. It's not. So you have to constantly be watching it. But what I would say is this, is when it comes to the overall value of your company, you cannot go wrong with investing in your brand. And the reason for that is it impacts some of the most key factors of your business. And again, when I ran an advertising agency, what I knew was my biggest asset walked out the door every day at 5 o'clock or 5:30 or 6, whatever time it was. But right, like it was the human resources. And you have to remember, nobody conducts business with an organization. They conduct business with people. And so if you have a strong brand, the other place you can look to see if it's working is at the quality of your applicants and the quantity of your applicants. And, somebody to think about is Dan Price. He's the one who was like, from now on, minimum wage at my company is $75,000. I don't know if you guys remember, it was a big deal. When that company posts a job, they get thousands of qualified applicants in a day, right? So you have to think about, okay, a good brand is it's gonna improve the quality of talent that you have. And the other thing is that branding is one of the most effective ways to impact your pricing strategy. A good brand, right? We all know it, like commodity cannot demand the same price as a strong brand. That's the value of your company. So again, right, like if you're talking about investing in your organization, you do not ignore brand and demand gen. That's my drop my mic.
I think you dropped it. I love that. Okay, who wants to go next? You want to take it, Elizabeth?
Sure, yeah. Can we also do another webinar on just brand and like help B2B people like see the value of brand? Like, please. Yes, Veronica. Yes, preach. Yeah, I think the repeat common theme, just to wrap up, like, the stance, at least perspective that I've had through this webinar, is that there are interesting and unique places to think outside the box as the going gets tough, the chips are down in the business. If you're trying to do a radical transformation or radical growth from 30 to 100 million, or whatever you want, unicorns, whatever your goal is, you need leaders who are going to look at things in a perspective that come from knowledge, but knowledge enough to know where to turn over rocks, to look at unique situations and look for unique areas to get customers. Your customer success churn rate, your land and expand, referrals, your lagging metrics, your leading metrics, your dark funnels, your share of voice, looking at the license plates, as Veronica had graciously shared with us, listening to calls, just being unique enough to think like, my playbook, sure, I've got my run-of-the-mill thing, but each business is so unique. There really should not be a quote unquote exact playbook for each and every person that we work with, or every company we work with. It's all unique circumstances, hence all the caveats, right, Jessica? But yeah, I mean, great leaders know that creativity is going to lead the way to look for new places to drum up cash. So hopefully that helps someone in the future, especially during the rocky year we're having.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just
Okay,
very 30
Jess.
seconds gonna say, just make sure you're socializing, you're having conversations about your strategy amongst everybody that it touches, because you can have a beautiful, well thought out strategy, and if you don't know the friction points within the organization, it could fall flat. So that's my last closing thoughts, because I see we have 5 minutes and at least 4 questions I can see right here. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, keep peppering questions in. Like, it's always helpful. So it's not that we don't have time for more. We'd love to see some more. But I'm gonna go first to Glenn's question. Thank you so much for asking it. And I'm gonna paraphrase it. He's asking a question specific to EOS companies and like really simplifying down those metrics. So maybe I can frame it in terms of, how have you helped structure a marketing dashboard, or like what lead or demand gen metrics are maybe coming up to the executive leadership team in your experiences? Is that question helpful?
So I'm working with a company right now that's not an EOS company. And one of the things, they are really trying to move from founder-led to the team taking over responsibility. And so, right, like, we are having this exact conversation about what are the key metrics that he needs to know to make sure we're moving the needle where he wants to go. And again, I don't know what your business is, and so I'm going to have to apologize, but this is a retail rental business, right? So we haven't even, the occupancy rate was a term they had never even talked about, but like, occupancy rate is going to very much influence the bottom line of the organization. Average daily yield. So, geez, there's demand gen, there's lead gen, and then there's operational. And if you are the CEO of the organization, I'm not sure, and I think, I don't remember who was that touched on this, I'm not sure you need to see how many website visits you're getting, or what the engagement is, which are important measures of demand and brand, right? Like, those are really important measures, but I don't think you need to see those. I think what you need to know is, how are those numbers affecting your bottom line? And again, right, like, that's why you should have a good marketing leader, is that person should know which KPIs it's going to pull the lever to move your business in the right direction. And right, set it up so you are getting that report in your weekly L10 from your marketing leader. And
I think it depends which L10 you're talking about. We're talking about measuring what matters, right? What level of the L10?
Yeah.
Too.
But I would say, here are my goals. I would go to your marketing leader and say, here are my goals. What are the KPIs you're going to report to me, so I know you're doing your job?
Yep. Love that. Any other little things, or like, you're in a different kind of larger, more SaaS context, Elizabeth, what are the types of metrics that you've brought to your executive leaders?
For lead generation specifically, God, metrics.
Either.
So demand gen in general, lifetime value, customer acquisition costs. So we really, when I'm talking to leaders, I leave out most of the share of voice, you know, those softer things, because they genuinely care about what drives the revenue of the business. So I tailor my conversations I have with anybody with a C title and above to be in the language that they care about, right? So customer acquisition costs in general, and I work with sales and customer success to really understand how, what, where, when, and lifetime value seem to be the most important, especially in B2B SaaS. The lifetime value of the customer, you know, is it going up? Is it going down? Those are lagging metrics, but really those are the important ones because they point directly to revenue, and revenue is king, especially in the areas that I work with. You know, they want to go to, they're like, our next goal is 50 million. We don't care what you do, just get there. Our next goal is IPO. We don't care what you do, get there, you know? So these kinds of conversations are much more hardcore in that aspect of revenue driving.
The only thing I was going to add, and you know how I said, like, it depends on the level of the L10, but the only thing I was going to add was, you know, units and average sales and things like that, and top line revenue. But I think sometimes in early stage businesses, you may want to flash some of the brand and the website traffic and the email just to show that you're looking at it. So our favorite, it depends. But if we're thinking about measuring what matters, it's usually cost of acquisition, lifetime value, units sold, units converted, conversion rates, average sale dollar, and then how that ultimately rolls up to the top line. And let's not forget about the bottom line. But depending on what stage you're in, if you're in rapid growth in your investment mode, you know, again, it depends.
Yeah,
I loved that. I saw that question in there about social, but go ahead, Jess, you pick which, are you going to?
Well, I want to end on time. Gotta get out of here, but yeah, no, there's so much in here. So I just want to thank everyone so much for joining, especially those of you who have to have a hard stop and bounce out of here. But there's so much more that we could dig into. And if there's anything that we can help with, even if it's just a conversation or a data point for you, like, please reach out. If anything, that it depends, and like, you should be getting good, meaningful information from your marketing team, or like, if we can be helpful in you thinking about how to improve that for yourself, like, please don't be a stranger. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to our amazing CMOs for all your insights. This was a blast. So everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will just see you very soon, maybe at our July 23rd webinar.